Hello and Samhain blessings, everybody. I'm just busy here carving a turnip, which is one of the traditions in Ireland, and I'll tell you something about that in a minute. I'm going to use the inner parts for soup and for a pie, which is what I do every year. But before I go on talking about the turnip, if you look outside, it's damp and grey and miserable, and all the trees are shedding their leaves, and it looks miserable and like death. But actually, it's the Celtic New Year. So it's a time for feasting and celebrating, for finishing things, for contemplating what you achieved in the last year and planning what you want to achieve next year. So it's a time according to the Colcannon calendar, Samhain means seed fall. So if you imagine a seed as something that you're going to sow in the earth now and guard it and hope that it's going to turn out and manifest as a beautiful plant next year, it's a good time to sow some metaphorical seeds as well. So I've already made my 3 turnips and I'm making a 4th one. And believe me, I know how Michelangelo felt, because as I'm carving these turnips, it's not me that's carving them. They're revealing their own individual faces. So various types of David are appearing here. And the reason we use turnips here in Ireland is because obviously it's a vegetable that grows well here, and people have used them for eons. And so the good thing is you can take the insides out and eat it, but they last a lot longer as well. They don't just fall in on themselves and collapse like pumpkins do. They just slowly shrivel up. And so as you're going into Samhain, as they get older and more shriveled looking, they really, really fit the festival much better. I'm going to use the interior of the turnip to use in a pie and to make a lovely root vegetable soup. And that's what we use for our feast. That's what we eat at our feast, along with apple crumble or apple pie. Apples feature very much. And in the past, there would be lots of games with apples. I'm sure everybody knows apple bobbing and apples on a string. And of course, young girls would have peeled an apple to divine as to who their husband would be. So you peel your apple in one piece, throw it over your shoulder, and it's supposed to land forming the initial of your future husband's name. Or you could sleep with an apple under your pillow and you would dream about your future husband. Because obviously apples are one of the fruits of the goddess, and they represent fertility and fecundity. So again, we're sowing seeds for the future. Another thing that we do is that when we set the table to have our feast, we always leave a place empty in case the ancestors want to come and join us. So any loved ones who've passed on are welcome to come and sit at the table with us, and they have their own seat and their own plate and their own cutlery and everything. We just set a place for them. And in case they decide to come when we're in bed, we smear the fire. So that means we will cover it lightly with some of the turf, but not enough to keep it blazing, just enough to keep it ticking over. And we would leave perhaps a glass of poitín or a glass of whiskey and some tobacco to welcome the ancestors and encourage them to make themselves feel at home and settle in for the evening and give us a lovely visit. Samhain is also associated with, for some people anyway, the Morrigan or the Great Queen. She's renowned as a warrior queen, a battle queen, and she's a triple goddess. And one of the goddesses in this triplicate is Macha, and she would be known in many, many guises, but one of them is as a bloodthirsty warrior queen as well. And the Celts used to take heads from their enemies, and they would put their heads, like this for example, into a niche in a special place in their home, because they believed the soul was in the head. And so to capture somebody's head was to capture their soul and really create havoc for the enemies. But the heads of the enemies were known as Macca's mast, because mast are fallen nuts, and these warriors have fallen in battle, and their heads are like nuts that can be cracked. And the successful warriors would bring these heads back and put them in the niches, as I'm saying. So that's kind of what the turnip heads represent in one way. But there's also some folklore about a fella called Jack. And he was a blacksmith, and he wasn't a very nice man. He wasn't a very good man. He was a miserable drunk and quite stingy as well, and a bit of a trickster, a bit of an underhand double dealer. You know, there's lots of them about today as well. So he's at a gambling game. He's gambling away, and the devil is in the company. And the devil wins the game, and Jack has to forfeit his life, or his soul rather. And he persuades the devil to give him an extra year. And the next year, when the devil comes to claim his winnings, Jack's soul, Jack says, hang on, let's go for a drink first before you take me off. And because he has no money to pay, because he's too stingy, he persuades the devil to turn himself into a coin. And the devil does so, but Jack quickly picks the coin up, puts it into his pocket, where he just happens to have a silver cross. So the devil is powerless, he can't do anything. And then Jack says to the devil, I'll let you go if you promise not to come back for me for 10 years. So the devil says, grand, I'll come back in 10 years. And away he goes. And 10 years later, he comes again to collect Jack's soul. And Jack somehow persuades him to go up into a tree. And then he carves a cross into the tree. And the devil is stuck in the tree because he can't come down past the cross. So this time Jack says to him, I'll let you out of the tree if you promise you will not take my soul. So the devil has to agree. He can't sit in a tree for eternity. So he agrees. And off he goes. And then eventually when Jack does die, because he's such a miserable, cheating, two-faced, backstabbing, horrible individual, God says, no, you're not coming into heaven. And when Jack gets down to hell, the devil says, sorry, you can't come in here because we had an agreement that I would not take your soul. So what he did instead was he gave him a coal from one of hell's fires, and Jack had to create a lantern like these, put his coal into it, and he's travelling the earth today. And that's just how we got the jack-o'-lantern. So this carving of the turnip is commemorating and reminding us not to be double dealing, backstabbing, cheating, lying, and all those other horrible things that so many in the world are behaving today. And another custom today, we see children running around with the little costumes on, and they're looking for money. They go from house to house trick-or-treating. And the origin of that is that in the past, children would indeed go from house to house, but they used to make little cakes. And they would go and sell the little cakes. They were called soul cakes. And what they would do is they would go to each house and ask for some money to say a mass for all the souls that had passed over, and they would give the people the little cakes in exchange. They're pretty much selling these little cakes to their neighbours. But now it's the reverse. The neighbours that the children visit today are giving the children something, and the whole notion of the souls that are sitting there waiting for help, they're completely forgotten about because it's become so commercialised. The idea of dressing up in the costumes was because on Samhain night, because it's that time of year when the veil is thin between our realm and the other realms, because the veil is thin, souls and spirits from other areas, other realms can come through and visit. That's when we see the ancestors coming. And so along with the ancestors that may want to visit us, there could also be some mischievous spirits So it's best to travel in disguise. So if you're out and about on Samhain night, you might wear clothes that don't belong to you, and you might wear a mask so that you look different. And this is all to confuse the wicked, mischievous spirits that might be walking the earth while the veil is thin. Of course, if you carry a turnip with you, I have to put a little string on these. If you carry a turnip with you, that's probably sufficient to frighten off all those mischievous spirits that might want to do you harm. I do like nibbling on raw turnip while I'm carving. That's almost done now. So I'll just tell you about some of the plants that you might want to ally with at this time of year. Rosemary is a really good one. Oh, it's absolutely divine. We know that rosemary is for remembrance, but that's because the volatile oils can affect our cardiovascular system and improve the taking of oxygen into the brain, so we remember. But on an energetic level, it helps us to remember our ancestors, our heritage, and who we actually really are inside, because we're not the facade that we put out there, which is a consumer and running about being busy, busy, busy. Actually, inside, we're a soul with a long history and a long connection going way back. And when we smell the rosemary, it's just so beautiful. It really helps you to get back in touch with your heritage, with your past, remember who you really are. So it's a lovely plant to work with and to use in your cooking. So I'm going to put some in the pie I'm going to make. And then another plant that you could ally with would be the elder tree. And we know that the elder tree, the flowers in the summertime, are very popular with people who like to make cordials and champagnes. You can also dry them for tea for respiratory problems. And the berries are very, very good for fluey chests as well, you know, respiratory problems deep in the chest. But she's also a very magical tree. She is the mother elder in the forest or the woodland. She is the wise elder, and she's very magical. And in the past, the church detested elder and would chop her down regularly. And over the centuries, she became known to have a very bad press. You know, you would never hit a child with an elder branch because the child would sicken, and you would never put a baby into a cradle made from elder because they would just sicken and die. But this is just propaganda, because really she's nature's apothecary. She heals on so many levels, and all parts of the tree can be used. So I've mentioned the flowers and the berries, but the leaves can also be used for skin complaints such as chilblains and sprains and wounds, and even green wounds. And you can use the bark as well as a purgative if you need to cleanse. So all round she's very healing, but also she gives us her wisdom as well if we work with her in a respectful way. We never ever burn elder, and we never take anything from her without asking first and giving due respect and gratitude back. Something that would be lovely to do at this time of the year as she's dying back and the leaves are falling is if you take a little branch, inside the bark, it's very soft and pithy, and you can push it through and you're left with a hollow tube. So you can make a little pipe or a little flute, and people have done that in the past very, very often. So she's a wonderful ally to work with, because she's also a guardian of gateways. And when we're here at Samhain, we're in that liminal time between the old year and the new year, between the summer and the winter. So that's why the veil between the realms is so thin. But it's also why she's so good to work with, because she's the guardian of that portal into the other realms. So it's best to have her on your side. So I think this is just about finished. I'm going to pop a candle in, and we'll see what he looks like. The smell of singed turnip is so evocative of Samhain and Halloween. It's just the most gorgeous smell. It makes you hungry and it makes you get excited because it's Samhain and goodness knows what might happen. But what's going to happen now is I'm about to make my pie. So I'm going to wish you all Samhain blessings. Have a wonderful holiday and connect with your ancestors and connect with those plants and have a fantastic weekend. So I'll see you in another week. I've got to get busy. Bye for now.